Grog.
Hello and welcome to the Cider Shed podcast. It's just me, Peter Fickling, and Matthew Weir again. Keri's in the departure lounge of some Spanish airport, clutching a straw donkey and an IKEA bag full of duty-free. She's preparing her journey home to see us all. So, Matthew, what's foreign for welcome home?
Well, it depends where you are, doesn't it? I mean, if you were saying welcome to Portugal, you'd say bem-vindo. What do you think they're going to say to Keri when she gets back?
Well, I have it on good authority from Keri that basically, if you're traveling to another country, there's all number of well-organized hoops for you to jump through to, become COVID secure and enjoy your time in your foreign destination of choice. But coming home, you can pretty much say what you want, and they just waltz you through. So I think she'll be back in her bed in Brighton, in no time.
Okay, yeah, she was due to board her flight around 10 o'clock Spanish time, wasn't she? So I was hoping that we're recording a little earlier tonight, but I was hoping to actually track her on Flight Radar as we were doing the show. And if the plane suddenly turns around over France, I guess that they'd ran out of ham-on sandwiches and she'd ordered them to go back to Palma.
Well, there's nothing healthier than stalking a colleague live on air. I think that's
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Keri would want me to say that she will be obeying all the rules and regulations when she gets back, and will be obviously obeying the laws of our country. I know, that goes without saying. Keri is an incredibly law-abiding and sensible woman.
I concur.
How can we do a neat segue from the phrase "sensible woman" to Alice? I don't know. Oh yeah, she's not at all, and she's got this madcap scheme going on where she's invited some kind of familial hater launch that's going to kind of bear down on her at her rehab centre. I mean, being serious, it does sound like quite a sensible thing to go through, if not agonising.
Isn't it tough love, this approach, when you are faced down by the people you've hurt? I know that some programs, they require you once you have recovered, that you have to go around and apologize to people as part of one of the stages. But I know that there's also this stage when people are often still in rehab that they have to be confronted. It's what's it called? And it's the intervention is the one that they generally do at home, isn't it? Where everyone has to bring a written statement and say that what you did hurt me and this is why, and so the person can realize that. And I guess it seems Alice, in conjunction with the facility, have asked Jenny, Brian, and Chris to come in with a letter each. But we had that whole everything is self-contained in one episode, wasn't there? Brian thought it was all modern nonsense, and then proceeded to reel off all these terrible things that Alice had done. You're just there like, put it in the letter, Brian.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, Jenny kind of managed to get him to do that, and by the end of the episode, he'd cottoned on. But I don't know what you think of that approach.
I do like the idea that it's she's invited it. I mean, and you assume willingly. I mean, they can't sort of twist someone's arm into that at a place like that. One assumes. So I think that that could make it quite healthy. I mean, the problem is, of course, it's the Archers. So the three people she's inviting to come in are her occasionally hysterical mother, her now confessed dipsomaniac and really quite aggrieved, and it sounds like PTSD suffering father, and her mentally subnormal husband. So will it work? In the real world, potentially.
Far much more fun to get Emma in to write a letter, I thought.
No, just one more hour and that thing. Yeah.
Just reams of paper coming out of the room, through the clinic and out down the driveway.
Poor Ed wordlessly padding in and out from the car park with another wheelbarrow full of double line paper.
Yeah.
I did have a little daydream where sort of like Alice had sort of corrupted the whole thing, and they get there and she's like, well, hello and welcome, take a seat, and she's doing a kind of like drunk voice. And just the whole thing's been an elaborate setup, and she just starts tearing into them. I mean, you never know; that could end up happening anyway.
Yeah, is it going to be plain sailing? I don't think so.
And will we hear it?
Yeah, I think so, because they're setting it up as Monday's episode. Well, as Monday, so I think we might hear them in their final preparations on Sunday.
Is it too late for me to book a week off next week? I mean, it's my turn.
Well, you can if you like. Keri will be back in all her glory. I mean, I'm start all. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago I said one of my fears was that we're still missing out on key things, and then they completely blew my theory out of the water, and they showed the Casey they played the Casey wedding. So I think we get to hear this. I'm pretty sure we do.
Yeah, and they have, with the Alice plotline, they haven't shirked any of these things. They have given us the full kind of warts and all experience. Even, I mean, God, I just remembered the hallucinated baby in the bath. So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
we'll hear it next week, no doubt.
Yes, I just I think if anything, the person who seemed Brian, obviously, I consider him as a unit with Jenny. They're working on this letter. What do you think Chris puts together? What's he going to say? Because he seemed a little almost like he stepped away from it a bit when his conversations with Amy.
Well, maybe he'll use his art to try and speak to her and make her a tree out of iron. I mean, that seems to be his main form of kind of like creative expression or communication. I mean, I don't know. He's not the. So he had that long chat with Amy, and you really didn't get a sense of a particularly complex or sort of deep thinker. I do remember ages ago talking about the fact that Chris had been a sort of peripheral figure, and actually the Alice plotline was the first time that we'd started to see any kind of extra depths or kind of dimensions to him. And then here we were after this whole experience, and when he was having that conversation with Amy, I just really didn't feel like he was like a fully rounded or interesting character. I mean, the best example of that was when he was trying to sell that dinner he'd bought to Neil and Susan. I was just like, yeah, this guy's, there's nothing there.
Yeah, and he's also suddenly parenting again after apparently just not being available at all for about 6 weeks, which has pushed Susan to the limit. And suddenly he's back, ultra responsible. He's going to move back into the nest and needs to stand on his own 2 feet again when he's been so dependent on others. So it seemed like a real gear shift all of a sudden that didn't seem natural.
And Susan sort of said it herself, like, how's he going to cope? I mean, he's kind of, he did suggest that his folks are just round the corner, but it's not, that's not the thing with the thing about a small child is you don't, it all works in minutes and tens of minutes. It's not like you can kind of plan and, and they'll pop across at 7 and then at 8 o'clock they'll head home again. It seems very all or nothing.
Isn't the nest like completely opposite in relation to where Jenny and Brian are now? Or have I imagined that?
I have almost no sense of the layout of the village whatsoever.
I've got a feeling that like you can see the nest from where Jenny and Brian live now, but I might have that wrong. Someone else can tell me if I've got that wrong, but I think that's the case.
Yeah, I thought it was just like there's just a sort of hedge studded and impregnated with thousands of empties, so it kind of looks like a kind of crystal palace glinting in the sun. Just those kind of piles of Alice's spent bottles.
Are we ever going to get closure on who made the scarecrow outside the bull? That's what I want to know.
I mean, was I right in my supposition, and lots of other people's supposition, that it was Alice's kind of, self-flagellating farewell before she kind of like fled the village?
Yes, I think once we'd realised it wasn't Alice herself, we had to go with the other option, which was that it was Alice had made it. So yeah. I don't know if that'll ever get referenced again, whether she's back out or not.
But I know. I mean, obviously, the Archers community is a large one, and anyone who's, you've got your very smart Archers listeners, and you've got your not so smart Archers listeners. So I think the script writers are aware of that. I mean, they might feel the need to tidy it up. It does feel like a fairly big omission.
Just to say, if you're listening to this podcast, you're one of the smart ones.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, honestly, I haven't seen any evidence to the contrary. I haven't seen a stupid the cider shedder or whatever. Do we have? No, but we don't have a name for anyone who listens to the show yet. And I think that's quite healthy.
And long may it continue. Yeah,
exactly. It's about. I always very suspicious of those kind of self-anointed communities.
Yeah, without getting too much into it, we were kind of put on the naughty step last week for bad language, but we had so much. And that was before the last episode went out, where we actually did list all the things you can and cannot say, which you expertly bleeped, Peter. But the feedback from people was so reassuring. Someone actually said they wanted 30% more bad language in one of the bits of the feedback. So yeah, So yeah, we understand that you're all a very, very intelligent bunch, and we appreciate you very much.
And now I'm feeling incredibly stupid because I'm completely lost. Where were we?
We were talking about Chris not being a very rounded character.
Yeah. So before we disappeared up our own arses, yeah, yeah. No, so he's thick as pig shit, and I don't think he's going to be contributing a huge amount. And also, the other thing is, every time I've heard him talk about Alice, actually, this is a slight exaggeration, but it's always been how it affects him, what the effect on him and Martha is. And I guess as a parent, you can sort of argue that maybe he's focused on his daughter, blah 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 blah. But it's always very obvious. Like he never shows the imagination to sort of try and decode why Alice might have got there, which kind of speaks to a sort of like a fairly dysfunctional relationship. Like the fact that I just don't. Anyway, I don't know. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, but that came from the top, didn't it? That came from Peggy. She said, "Just cut and run. You've got to think of yourself and Martha." And I think that has stuck with him, and he's even repeated it himself in not so many words.
Didn't Peggy go back on that when she was talking to Jenny?
She went back on it to Jenny and she went back on it to Alice, but Jenny pretty much, well, Alice went round there to have it out with her after Kate got her all fired up, and then Peggy apologized, and Peggy had also apologized to Jenny before, which is how Alice and Kate got wind of it, but Jenny still isn't really speaking to Peggy, so I doubt that either of those have gone to Chris and said, "Oh, by the way, Gran or Mum said that she was wrong to say what she said." So I think Chris is still rattling along, thinking he's 100% doing the right thing, and maybe he is.
Isn't the human brain remarkable that we can store this much nonsense so
I know.
in our head? Just think, you've got whole lobes full of Archer's tosh.
Yes, and I'm starting to worry. Was it that theory that Conan Doyle? Well, I guess it was Conan Doyle's theory, but it was Sherlock Holmes, that the mind is finite, like an attic, and information it's like boxes. And if you have to put certain things in, then certain other things must be pushed out. So what are we losing from listening to the Archers?
Well, I was going to take it a step further and say, what on earth has Joe Pasquale edged out of my brain? This Joe Pasquale is using up space in my brain. I can remember at least 10 things that man's done.
Wow. Okay. Do you know what? Until you mentioned his name there, I probably hadn't thought about that human for at least a decade.
Yeah, and what's the other one? The guy who plays Keith Lemon, and he's now doing that show with him. Anyway, the point, yeah, it's the same point again and again. Yeah,
he's now doing that show with
Amanda Holden.
Okay, because I've almost completely ignored that, but that's him, is it?
Yeah, it's the show that was put on Earth to make Mrs. Brown's Boys seem like a kind of a cultural high point, almost kind of Glyndebourne desk.
So he plays her gran in that. That's the thing.
Yeah, it's appalling.
Okay.
I mean, Chris will love it.
I mean, essentially, what's happened there is I saw the title and I saw a quick bit of the trailer, and then I saw Keith Lemon's name mentioned, and I thought, oh, that's him. Then is it? Essentially, what's happened is it's 5 to 5 on a Friday, and someone's just gone, Golden Girls, get Amanda Holden in, and we'll call it Holden Girls, and they've all gone down the pub. That's basically what's happened there, isn't it?
The moment I saw it was obviously when you have a toddler, your cliche time, your remote control is no longer yours. It suddenly lives between cushions, or it's been pushed under the sofa, so that you don't just wordlessly grab it from the place it always sits. So they came up on the TV, and I think I was only capturing tiny glimpses of it as I scrambled desperately around the room to try and find the ability to turn them off as quickly as possible.
Okay, well, I'm very lucky in that I'm so detached from what is on UK TV these days.
Yeah, you see when your Brazilian soaps, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
So we're now Kevin Bacon steps away from our original topic. So Chris is not going to be useful. Brian is going to be Brian could be useful if he can find the words and get them down, although he sounded very beaten up. And Jenny is rolling up her sleeves to be a good mum, which despite all my criticisms, she definitely does her best to be. And we both agree, I think, that if I'm sorry to sort of like put words into your mouth, did we sort of vaguely agree that if Alice is inviting this, it could be a good thing?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. But as we said, in good intentions, let's see where it goes.
Yeah, I do. I will bitterly accept that having invested so much time into this plot line, it will be probably quite a moving. And they have written some of these more heightened scenes, and Alice, the actress who plays Alice, acts them very, very well. So I think all the actors involved are very good. So I think it could be something to look forward to.
Yeah, that's one of the shames about this, isn't it? Drunk Alice is so well done
Yeah,
that in order for Alice to be a success, we're not going to hear Drunk Alice anymore.
true. Although down the line, but this is the thing. I mean, actors come and go in the show, so I mean, down the line, if they ever have to sort of interview for a replacement Alice, it's going to be like, come on then, let's not mess around. Let's hear you drunk, Alice. She's having a relapse. That's one hell of a litmus test. With Alice and Chris, they're a 50% dull couple. Chris but there's no way you could call Alice dull. On the other side of the village, you have two of the dullest pairings you'll ever have committed to the radio.
Beth and Ben.
Yeah, and of course.
Well, going back to who we were talking about, Amy and Chris, although they're not quite the pairing.
Yes, of course. Yeah, Chris is being dull in on two fronts. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean, Sunday's episode, Amy and Chris bump into each other at the shops. Amy just seems to be stockpiling chocolate for some reason. Have you noticed? I don't know why. Every time that she was throughout Monday, was it Monday's episode and Sundays, that she just seemed to be buying loads of cakes and chocolate and living her best life.
Is it too early to find deeper meaning in that?
No, she referenced this herself. She said that she was worried she wouldn't fit back into her uniform when she went back to Nottingham. But she's free to do it. I've pigged out all the way through the school holidays, so I'm not one to talk. But so, Amy talking to Chris seemed to just be a vehicle to nurse-splain the effects of COVID to Chris, which is fine because obviously it's a very serious issue. And then, do you think there is something going to happen between these two? There's a lot of chatter about it on social media.
Yeah. I mean, I really don't want it to happen. Not for any particularly altruistic or kind of sensitive reasons, but I can't be bothered with it. And also, I don't remember Amy being that dull. But as you say, she was, the character, the actress, were being forced into a very kind of BBC health announcement sort of like shaped hole. So it was all a bit clumsy.
The two takeaways from Sunday were that COVID is quite a strain on the health service. Eddie's going to rig the flower and produce show, and that Brian says sell your lambs now before we strike a trade deal with Australia and New Zealand. So it was all all informative.
Oh, so they covered COVID and Brexit. That's good.
Yes, yeah, they did. They got it all out of the way on Sunday night.
Have they? Well, okay. I'm looking forward to next Sunday when they sort of blithely mention. Adam blithely mentions over the dinner table to Ian that Britain has fallen out of the top 10 of Germany's trading partners.
Yeah, can't wait for over a tagine, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, of course, yeah.
Yeah, well, that new trade deal with Morocco will be great for your kitchen implements, Ian.
That was real world depressing. I was quite sort of, I don't know, it was one of these kind of these markers of our decline. Has there ever been a duller conversation than Beth and Ben down by the river? And I held Ben in pretty high esteem up until this point. I was quite shocked by how inept he was. And then, sorry to sort of change tack and sort of go into rant mode, incredibly annoyed. I was almost screaming at the radio at just how farcical it was that a couple of their age could be put under strain by a guy flip-flopping from one in relationship to the other because he fancied her more. Like, it just seemed completely implausible, or am I being overly cynical?
Completely implausible. I mean, from my memory of being in teens, it was basically girls saying to me, "Are you going to dump her then, or what?" and then go out with me. So, I mean, but maybe I'm just a moral dustbin. And Beth had been wronged, hadn't she? Her boyfriend that Vince had warned her about had ran off with her best mate. So I guess obviously that is jarring, isn't it? And so she then speaks to Ben about how could anyone do that? And we're all thinking, oh, Evie, yeah, he did that. And instead of saying, look, you know what? Just to be totally clear, but he didn't. And I thought they were going to leave that and there was going to be some awkward scene where they bump into Evie, but he's got it out of the way. The thing that disturbed me most was Bess was in that scene. Did you hear Bess's incessant panting
I
all the
didn't.
way through the scene? I thought it was like a shunting steam train going all the way through.
I was cooking, so I probably kept on stirring the pan unnecessarily, thinking it was something kind of catching or hissing.
I thought it was Ben hyperventilating under pressure at one point.
or Beth was multitasking. I mean, fair play to her. But yeah, it was, and if that was the case, it was definitely not quite as dull a scene as I thought it was. Beth's little fists going like pistons while she's simultaneously delivering Ben a lecture about the comparative morality of various different sort of dumping scenarios.
Yeah, well, he did take her up Lakey Hill on the date, didn't he? And he pilfered Jill's fridge.
Well, that's Leonard's job.
Oh, as I said it, I was like, oh no.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a fairly childish human being, but pathetic euphemisms, as we know, is my jam, as I believe people who used to be kids say.
So they had the two dates, didn't they? They had the first date was when they took the picnic up Lakey Hill, and
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
He took a space up Lakey Hill. He admired the view there, and then she insisted on a cold dip afterwards in the river.
Yes, to go to the perch, didn't they?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, he didn't. When she asked about the am, he neglected to say, "Oh, what
It's got Charlie's corpse in a
Yeah. Some of the family have been dumping chemicals in that, and have now been permitted to go ahead and do it. I mean, under new regulations, Brian would probably get off scot-free now, wouldn't he? With all this new effluent.
Oh, that would be a fantastic plot line if Martha has some kind of defect, but it turns not to be fecal alcohol syndrome, but sort of like a set of gills from all the pollutants that her grandfather had dumped in the environment.
Make it happen, scriptwriters.
But yes, do you know what? Well done you, because maybe everyone made that connection, but I hadn't made the connection that the am was off limits because of the Brian's handiwork.
Did he give a reason why the am was? He just said you can't
No.
swim there, and I don't think he gave a reason. But then he said the perch, yeah, which is, I mean, we've heard in the last year we've heard Adam and Ian there, and then Harrison and Fallon went for a dip.
Oh, of course,
they?
yeah. You were, of course, yeah. You were quite taken by that, weren't you?
Yeah, Fallon had the shivers, didn't she?
Your lovely wife asking why your fingernails were buried deep into your thigh. You were just and then banging the desk with your other fists, sort of just furiously.
Yeah, we got to hear about Harrison just slightly this week. He had a new barbecue, didn't he? Which is where Chris and Martha had gone round there, which is why we found Brian and Jenny on their own doing their letter writing.
Have you like me gone down the those eggs look quite good, and then you realize how much they cost, and you go, well, maybe I don't want one of those eggs. Actually, I'm perfectly happy with a £10 disposable barbecue from the co-op.
Well, it's been a long time since. I mean, you were recently. You were quite. Maybe you already were aware, but you were quite disgusted at the lack of good barbecue facilities where you were camping, right?
Yeah, I have been incredibly spoiled. If you go camping in the state parks in California, every single pitch has a full fire pit with a grill that goes over the top. So it's absolute heaven. It's incredible. So, if that's what Harrison's got at home, then, it was definitely noteworthy enough to make it onto the Archers. Was it noteworthy enough to make it onto the cider shed? That's for everyone else to decide.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's just that,
no. That's my fault. But I was more criticizing myself. But yes, I know. I think I've been very spoiled.
Yeah, in Australia, generally just even the public parks, like the park you go to with your kids, will have coin-operated barbecues. that the
Coin
council come in.
operated barbecues.
Yeah, that they come and clean down afterwards, so you can bring all your snags and everything there and your burgers, and you can just fire away these like gas-fired coin-operated barbecues, and
Oh,
then
oh, oh, oh! I see what you mean. So what? So it's like a so the gas is the gas is the thing that's metered.
yes,
Ah, okay.
and you just put the coins in, fire it up for an hour or whatever, and cook your food and head off.
Yeah, that I do. That's one of the things I like about my part of Southeast London is it's just a Karen incident waiting to happen. Like, there's all the signs to say don't barbecue, but actually some of the parks a bit closer in have started to put up barbecuing facilities. But I don't know why they don't just kind of like start to make it, start to actually embrace it and encourage it, because people just go for gold anyway.
Those disposable things. I mean, I think the last time I used one of those was on my 40th. We all drove over to Rossnola on the northwest coast of Ireland to go surfing, and on the evening we did those on the beaches. But they're not the most pleasurable experience. I mean, it's just like being at a Cure concert for the first 30 minutes with all the smoke coming back up into your face. So
Well, he hasn't aged very well. You'd put up some kind of giant sort of like smoke screen if you had to put on that much makeup and hairspray.
yeah, that's true.
Where on earth have we gone to, Matthew?
Sorry,
Right.
Peter. I feel it's
No,
my
it was my
fault.
fault. It was definitely my fault. Well, it's our fault. We have gone down a waffle hole, and it's now our job to try and claw our way out.
Okay.
So Harrison barbecue, Chris still dull, but that was noteworthy because he'd been there with Martha.
Ben and Beth.
Ben and Beth are in the perch. It's hilarious, right? Because Beth, she's such a character. She splashes him, and then she says he's wet enough, so she drags him into the water.
Exactly.
Honestly, it happened.
But not before she got Bess to shake the remnants of the river all over him to get
Oh
him all
God,
wet already.
yeah, incredible.
It got a bit sexy as well, though, didn't she, with her swimming costume?
Yeah, but I mean, call me old fashioned, but the idea of someone sort of squeezed into a swimming costume like a sort of badly made sausage doesn't sound that appealing. Sort of like a kind of folds of underboob spilling out.
I don't think it was that. I think she was meant to look pretty fit, don't you? Ben was quite taken. The only thing that confused me was when they were talking, like Ben was saying he hadn't got something to go properly swimming in, was that Beth then turned around and said, I've got my Nana's jeans. I thought she was going to get Iris Case's flares and like wade into the perch or something and then like just see her disappear beneath the surface.
I guess that's the kind of like the voices and the acting. So Nana Casey does sound quite sort of lean and sort of like wiry. As a person, she sounds like she's quite a thin woman. But Vince does have a kind of fleshy, kind of like big, kind of bulky sound to him. So I think I bought into that. I thought that sort of Ben was after a bit more cushion for his push, and I thought that sort of Beth was daddy's girl, especially with the enmity, the fact that they were kind of, cut from the same cloth, which is why they were kind of like at each other a bit.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, let's see where they go with this couple. I wasn't completely enamored with either of their two scenes.
You don't think this is a long term thing? I think we're in for they're a long term couple. I'm pretty sure.
I think they might be, but they just didn't sell themselves to me this week. And I think part of the problem was as well that Casey wedding. I was on holiday when that happened, and I listened after the event.
Right.
And it was just one of those things where I didn't get into it in the flow of that week of the episode because I'm still kind of getting used to there being a Sunday episode. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I haven't listened to one live. I mean, by live I mean kind of in the evening, which is unusual for me. I mean, I very rarely am a day behind, but it's also, I said this a couple of weeks ago, I under normal circumstances not doing a podcast, I think I would have taken a hiatus. I think these last few weeks would have driven me to a little bit of a break from the Archers.
Oh no, I'm quite enjoying I know that last week we were just saying how random it was, but I am almost reveling in just how random it is. And who knows? There were theories last week I saw on social media that maybe that very sparse casting was a cause of maybe the cast having to even lock down, and they only had a few members of cast. I mean, if you took that story out last week, the yacht, the horse, and whatever else the other two stories were, they were completely self-contained, and they wouldn't, aside from Jenny mentioning that she had a chat with Lillian about the yacht and the horse, they just wouldn't exist. And I don't think we'll hear about them again. And it was strange. It was almost like something happened. They were like, go to the vault, get the yacht and the horse storyline. We need it.
Well, maybe, or the actor who plays Lillian, when she re-upped on her contract, she had some kind of bizarre clause in there that was kind of like, yeah, she gets like a week-long special. It was, yeah. Anyway, let's not come back to that. It was absolutely dreadful. But I mean, this week, your light relief was supplied by Eddie and Joy, and it was nice to hear from them. I mean, so yeah, I do know what you mean. Like, it's not all bad this week, but I feel like I'm just carrying a bit of a grudge after like since the that brilliant week where they were all at the oh, help me out, what's the name
Lower
of it?
Loxley.
Lower Loxley. Since that brilliant week, thank you. I have been in a bit of a grump. It has been below par by my tastes. But I will admit this week there has been a few high points. Like hearing from Eddie and Joy was fun. I did enjoy today's episode. But did you, like me, find the sort of light relief? Were you slightly distracted by Eddie's bad behaviour and how sort of out of character it was that he was being a bit of a shitbag to Joy?
Yeah, it was a total duffer of a gift. I mean, I can't imagine. Luckily, he got Joy in the swap, because I don't think Roy would have been having too much fun on that trip. He'd have just been asking Eddie to drop him off at the nearest knocking shop in Felpersham, I think.
And also, Joy is smart enough and also mature enough to kind of not look a gift horse in the mouth. So she's like, right, it's Eddie. He's trying to shaft me, so I'll just play possum and get as much company out of this as I possibly can. So if that involves watching him feed his turkeys or do a shift at the local market, then so be it. And only Joy could sort of do it with a smile on her face and kind of like she understands the transactionality of that. Like, she's not kind of offended by it. But I did also, it was very out of character for Eddie to be so kind of mercenary, because ultimately driving her around for a couple of hours wouldn't cost him any money. He had offered the prize, and wasn't he pretty much doing that for other people anyway, just sort of on the hope that they'd give him some cash?
Yes, the hope that he'd get like gratuity money instead of direct cash, and then Rex got the hump with him because it was affecting his taxi service, didn't he?
Yeah. So it would have been a lot more true to Eddie's character if he'd been like, oh, we'll do this, this, and this, but of course, a bit of help with this wouldn't go amiss, and of course I will have to pay the entry fee here, and this doesn't, the upkeep isn't, it's not free, trying to kind of guilt Joy into giving him some money. That would have been maybe more true to character.
Yeah, it was meant to be the luxury lunch at Underwood's, but there was a little asterisk there, which basically just said, no lunch.
Yeah.
If you looked further down and checked the small print on the prize. Yeah, it was I felt a bit sad for Joy when she said she told all her mates. I was like, have you though? Have you told all of them? Maybe you've had a little boast about it in the WhatsApp group.
Who are her real friends in the village? I mean, Philip's gone, although she'd struck up a bit of a relationship with him. But Kirsty's a pal. Roy, I think, is a friend of hers. Fallon, definitely.
Lee and Helen.
And
now. The boys.
Obviously, Peggy's a convert after being initially very cold. So she does have some people in the village now who I think would give her the time of day. It is starting to be implausible that she's as lonely as she, because we hear her having fun with people enough, and Linda and her have got a certain kind of, Linda's got a grudging respect for her.
But wouldn't all of those people have known if she just said, "Oh, I'm going on Eddie's wonderful mystery tour"? They would have they would have, surely someone would have come forward if they're a friend and just said, "Look, Joy, here's how it is." But they didn't. And so Eddie's plan, I was a little bit dismayed that he didn't seize Oliver's idea as a tribute to Joe on what would have been his 100th birthday to just have a session with the cider club, which I thought would have been great.
Yeah, that's.
But he has now decided he's going to Vladimir Putin style rig the flower and produce show, and at the end of the mystery tour with Joy, he discovered that she was going to enter in at least 3 categories that he had put in stooge candidates like Kira and Mia of the Grundys. So it was unusual bakes, wasn't it? That was one of the categories. Can you remember what she won last year in the
No,
unusual bake section?
I no. This is all. This is you know. I think
These were my chuckle along to the Archers moments this week. So unusual bakes, she won with her vegan lamingtons. She then said that the judges commented that her rainbow buttonholes were spectacular, and then she won the photography competition, which was basically taking a photo of Peggy's rabid cat leaping at her.
she is a bit of a polymath, isn't she? I mean, she just seemed to have an extraordinary range of abilities and interests.
Yeah, and that actually pours cold water on this theory that she's Kaiser Soze verbal kint, because she's managed to do all of this in a short space of time in Ambridge. Who's to say that she hasn't done all of these other things that she says she's done in the past up in East Shields or wherever she's from? So yeah, I think that that adds weight to that theory that she's lived a full life.
I think she might be one of my favourite characters at the moment. I think I really her, like you were pining for Jim last week, and Lillian has fallen off the list controversially. Keri does not like Lillian. I don't think. I vaguely remember that. I don't know. I think Keri's not a fan of Lillian, and I think it's basically centres around the fact she finds the chuckle annoying or the cackle.
I think she just considers it a cackle and a G&T and not much else beyond that, doesn't she?
Yeah, but I think we all have, obviously, Keri, it's Brian, you, it's Fallon and Jim. But I think like any type of Joy interaction or Vince or Jim, and I'm happy. Give me that, and I'll sign off on that episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I feel like she's I think she's going to get bigger. I hope she's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger in the show.
And I mean, something that's been tugging at everyone's heartstrings, and I know Keri didn't like hearing it, was just how badly Neil was treating Susan in these recent weeks. So this situation came to a head this week, didn't it? With Susan. Initially, it started with where they've been for weeks. These awkward cross purposes, or Neil's not even listening conversations where she's offering him a cup of tea or something, and then the bombshell. Where's the lasagna dish? So it's round Shula's. I'm going round Shula's to get the lasagna dish. What did you make of that scene when she went round there?
When Susan went round there?
Yeah, the initial scene where it all came out.
Yeah, I mean, I assume that lasagna dish has been sort of wrapped in a tea towel and quietly smashed into dust at this point. For the fact it's been polluted by living in Shula's cupboard for a couple of weeks. I mean, I'm not a petty man or a particularly superstitious man, but I don't think I'd want to keep a dish that had played such a crucial role in the betrayal of my marriage. But yeah, I found it very, very sad. I didn't find it particularly moving when I was listening to it, but then later on I sort of thought about it, and I kind of like contextualized it with sort of my life, and I just thought about how humbling and miserable that must be, where you're so desperate to find out what's happening in your marriage that you go and throw yourself at the feet of your potential love rival to try and find out exactly what's going on.
Yeah, she goes round there and she hears that all these jobs he'd done, and then there was that moment where she said, "Oh, so I've been on my knees with Martha, and all that time he was here instead. So he'd rather be here than be with me."
He took you up Lakey Hill. Yes, he took me up Lakey. Oh my God, Neil!
Sorted your paving out.
Yeah,
did your weeding, and then he was going to clear out your shed. I think those were the tasks in hand, weren't they?
Mm.
But then she managed to go back and have this. Well, first of all, they had a blazing row, didn't they? About what they were going to eat that evening, and she was like, well, "How about lasagna?" And he was like, "Well, that takes ages." And she was like, "Yeah, it does, doesn't it?" Like it was like a major gotcha.
Yeah, I was waiting for my car to be MOT'd, and when I was listening to that, so I was walking around the park on my own, and so I really was concentrating, and that was absolutely brilliantly acted.
Yeah,
that scene, and she
said it's quite. Sorry, Peter, go on.
No, but you know exactly what I was just going to basically echo what you were saying. Like, yeah, and it made you to think. I mean, lasagna is not a particularly romantic dish, but it is involved. It's time consuming to do
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah, she said quite a special dish. Like she was really gonna, like, give him enough rope. So he storms off, and then the next thing we hear is the. You know what I didn't like, and I heard it again. Neil's wobble. He had it when he was trying to bring Emma back from the brink,
Yes. Oh, yes.
and then he happened again when he said, "You're starting to scare me." And we suddenly realised. Well, I'm going to come back to a theory here, but because I think he realised later after the event. But
Mm.
in terms of still loving his wife, absolutely he does. And he was there saying, "You're starting to scare me." And then she had the two main questions she wanted to ask them, and this was another one where I think I had a little chuckle when she was like, "How did you feel when Shula fell off the horse?" And I was in the kitchen. I was like, "I can answer that."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
But
around the country, a chorus was just like brilliant.
yeah, it was the sound of like 6 million cans of Skull opening.
Yeah, it was tragic when she opened her eyes. I mean, she's not real. I'm allowed to wish her dead. I've had enough of it.
I know the second question was quite disappointing. Are you in love with Shula? Because I think we all knew that he wasn't.
The whole thing was well acted, as I said, and I thought it was well scripted. But Neil's the gap in it for me was the idea that Neil wasn't worldly enough that when his wife was upset and bringing, and obviously reacting to what he'd been up to, that the scales didn't fall from his eyes, and he wasn't able to then be more apologetic and more understanding. Like Susan had to really spoon feed him the information before he understood what was going on. And at the end he did say sort of, Shula did warn me about, the tongues might start wagging,
Yeah,
and it's like, yeah, but why is it taking these two women to effing well point this out to you?
yeah. I mean, there was that scene, that part that Susan said to him. We had this beautiful evening at Grey Gables, and you barely said a word to me. And he was like, "I was
I was
enjoying
enjoying
my."
the lamb.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry.
here's my question to you, Peter. Keri is coming to Porto next month.
Yeah.
If me and Keri go out for a candlelit dinner and she orders the lamb main and then goes very silent, should we just assume that the pod is no more, or is she just enjoying her meal?
I mean, you can just create a manuscript based on the script, and then you can just read it verbatim. Keri's, I was enjoying the lamb.
But the reason I think it went full circle, because Neil did go to visit Shula in the stables. She got 2 visitations, didn't she? But Neil went first.
Mm.
And he said, "Yeah, you were right about the gossip." And then he said, at the house, I've been dealing with Martha, Chris not being there, Susan having all this trouble, Brian and Jennifer. And then there was all the stuff with Alice. And he was like, "I think I was treating this place as a safe haven." So he did get it.
Yeah, eventually. But I mean, basically, Shula, what you mistook for love was me just desperately trying to avoid dealing with a child.
I know. That was great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then he said, "I won't be dropping in uninvited." And he was like, "Bye." And then she was like, "Bye."
Actually, to be fair, the script writers have listened to us. Shula got a absolute kicking this week, and I didn't take any pleasure in it because, despite my irritation with Shula is not sort of vengeful or unpleasant, like, oh, I did just wish her dead, but the character, I don't wish any particular ill, but also the revenge is a dish best served cold. Susan's handing over of the envelope full of cash on Thursday's episode was, that was devastating.
Yeah, that was like Tom Hagen going to visit Jack Waltz to get Johnny Fontaine the part in The Godfather, wasn't it? She goes down to the stables. "I insist." Handing over the money to pay for 3 riding lessons. It was basically an offer that Shula couldn't refuse. And then Shula was like, "Oh, there's no need, because..." And then Susan was like, "Because what?"
Yeah, it was fantastic. And actually, that does, that I did really enjoy today, to be fair, after all my griping and moaning earlier on. I enjoyed Brian. I enjoyed Susan. I thought she was fantastic. So, the rest of it I could kind of turn a blind eye to.
I mean, we may yet on Sunday hear that Shula wakes up to find Banjo's head at the foot of her duvet.
If you need a horse's head to sever, then Shula's, it makes the job easier, doesn't it, to do it to Shula?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I feel that this week's pod has been a kind of a fairly good analog to the Archers. I feel like you have been the Susan of the show, professional, competent, funny, and informative, and I have been a waffle monger. Oh, you see, I couldn't even say that. Couldn't even get waffle monger out. So thank you, Matthew. I feel like you feel like you've carried me this week.
And prone to gossip, maybe Susan is. Are you saying the same about me? I love a bit of gossip.
I mean, you are prone to gossip, actually, aren't you? You are a bit
I'm
of a
terrible. I mean, the moment the recording stops, it's just it's like the microphones light up.
Well, you and Keri have a how can I put this delicately? You and Keri have a what I would describe as a kind of unhealthy fixation with certain cultural outpourings, and I watch this with a kind of dark fascination. Because obviously, yours and Keri's lives. It's not that, I mean, I would participate happily, except for the fact that, my life is a little less predictable at the moment. Is that fair to say? I think.
Yeah, I'm becoming. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that if something becomes less salacious and less interesting, it's quite easy to walk away from. So I'm going. I try to not gossip about things which aren't interesting. But as Peter Cook once said in Defense of Private Eye, if I met someone who said they didn't like gossip, I'd be meeting a liar.
Yeah, and I think I was trying to explain to someone about someone was saying to me about like the people who say, oh, I hate football, like I can't stand football. Why is football on all the time? I'm so bored of football. And I was trying to explain to them that they didn't understand that for a large majority of football fans, it's basically a giant gossip fest. Oh, and do you see what he did on the pitch? And you'll never guess what this happened. And then he said this, and she said that, and then this tackle went in, and he reacted like this. Like, I mean, the skill is, like it's entertaining, and actually the game's entertaining. But I think for a lot of people, the large point of interest is all of the kind of hoopla that surrounds it, which is, it's almost it's like it's like the Masked Singer or kind of Britain's Got Talent or something.
Yeah, I think there is also an element of it that it just helps you have personal rivalries, doesn't it? Battles with other people. I mean, you've only just got go to football Twitter and just see how supporters of the same club will just rip each other to shreds. I mean, look at a club as dysfunctional as Arsenal. I mean, the success, despite being pinned to the bottom of the table, of all their YouTube channels is incredible. I mean, if I ever had a son or a daughter and they came to me and said, I want to be an Arsenal fan, I would just show them all the Arsenal social media and YouTube, and they would quickly change their mind. It's a long lifetime engagement with misery.
Yes, dear listener, Keri is an Arsenal fan.
And not here to defend
not here to defend herself. And this is not bravado. This is not said for comedic effect. I genuinely have a problem with the fact you're a Chelsea fan. Like, it upsets me. Like,
I know. No, you've told me. That's fine.
You're such a nice guy, and you are caring and considerate, and like there is no side to Matthew at all. Like, what you see is what you get. He's a very straight shooting man, but he's a Chelsea fan. Like the two things, it's like oil and water. They just you can anyway. It just doesn't make any sense. But I hate Chelsea with such undiluted passion. It's quite weird actually how much I dislike Chelsea. But anyway, not as much as Tottenham. I hate them more.
Okay. And West Ham, are they completely off the hook?
West Ham, the thing is, West Ham are a detestable team, but they're my team. So, I mean,
yeah, that's how it works, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, but I don't. This is the thing. Okay, so here, I think this is why I dislike Chelsea so much, because a lot of Chelsea fans are in complete denial. I don't think you are, but I think a lot of Chelsea fans are in complete denial about the worst excesses of their supporters. And
no, absolutely not. I mean, I've been to games of the pre-Abramovich era where I've had to go into the side of the stands, and this was in an era where you would tell the steward you'd heard somebody hurling racist abuse, and the steward would just shrug his shoulders, despite in the program saying that there was a kick it out campaign. I think now they actually might do something.
Yeah.
This is like Matthew Harding Lower, and you go and tell the steward, and he's like, "What do you expect me to do about it? There's 20 of them."
You are. I will say this is in this. I do find this astonishing. You are slowly chipping away at my hatred of Chelsea. So that is. I mean, that is a powerful statement about our friendship.
Well, you are one of many lovely West Ham fans that I know. So
okay, I don't believe that, but thank you.
It's true.
I'll take it sincerely. I mean, I used to live in a Millwall sporting area, and they very patiently explained to me why I should hate being a West Ham fan, and they were quite convincing. I will say, Matthew,
yes.
we've now talked about football for about 5 or 6 minutes.
Well, it was either that or Highlander, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's still out there. I just said, let me check the emails. I haven't actually. Let me just check. Cider Shed. No emails requesting a.
I got some Twitter feedbacks and Facebook feedback saying they'd be up for some Highlander chat.
Would we break our rules and potentially, seeing as it's a format shattering concept, would we break our rules and throw open the Highlander episode to other correspondents?
Who knows? Let's see. I mean, we've talked about it being a kind of a lost episode special, haven't we? I'm sure we'll find time to do it at some point. But I did like one theory that we could do like a fan fiction where Jill and Peggy are actually training for the final battle on Lakey Hill as the two.
Jill would win. Jill's the Christopher Lambert character. Yeah, she's the reluctant warrior. Peggy's the Kurgan, sort of bloodlusted, sort of the thrill of the kill, but can't push himself beyond his sort of beyond the kind of the banality and sort of like the thinness of his sort of like bloodlust.
Maybe Peggy's fashioned a mighty broadsword from overcooked flapjacks.
Okay, this is kind of gold that you can look forward to if you do push us towards a Highlander special.
Okay, if you do want a Highlander special, then you can get in contact with our Twitter. We are at the Cider Shed Pod. You can get in contact via Facebook. That is at the Cider Shed Podcast, which is a Facebook group. Or you could even look up our Instagram, which I managed to post at least one meme last week of Keri. And we are the same as Twitter on that. We are at the Cider Shed Pod on Instagram. So, and Peter handles the emails, which is
hello@thecidershed.com. Maybe if we manage to get maybe 5 people requesting a Highlander episode, that could be enough. I think the clamour doesn't need to be very big.
No, absolutely not.
Well, Matthew, as I said, thank you for carrying me. It felt like a heavy burden that you had to shoulder, and I do appreciate it.
Well, Chelsea are generally carrying West Ham anyway, aren't they? So
I'll just say Joe Cole, Frank Lampard. Bye, everyone.
Bye.